Hey everybody, my name is Brandon from StockStreams.com, and today I want to talk about AMD stock, ticker symbol AMD. What I want to do first is go into Google and talk about the macro picture of what's going on in the semiconductor industry, and then I want to go into the earnings report to talk about how AMD is doing as a business, and then I want to go into the trading charts to see if there's a level or two to buy AMD if we want to buy AMD. So now let's get started. So here we are on Google, and here's a 1 week view of AMD's stock chart here, and we can see that AMD has been in a pretty well-defined downtrend, off about 8% in just a single week. However, we actually did report earnings last week on the 27th of April, and we will see in the next part of the video that AMD's earnings were actually pretty fantastic. So the question is, even though we had very good earnings report on April 27th, why has the stock fallen over 8% the past week? Well, if we look at the news of what's going on in AMD here, there's actually not that much bearish sentiment in the stock. So what that's telling me is that in the macro picture surrounding the semiconductor industry, there's nothing that I can see that clearly explains the pullback that we are seeing in AMD. However, there are a couple things that could be weighing on the stock price, and one of the main reasons is the fear that the chip sector may have seen peak shortage. Of course, I mentioned before about the semiconductor shortage and how that is a tailwind for the industry. Because everybody knows this, companies may have double ordered to build their inventory of chips that they need. Because of this, people are thinking that the inventories are already built, so companies will not need to order any more chips for the future, sort of like a pull forward effect for the semiconductor industry. But honestly, I do not think that we have hit the peak yet. This is a multi-year issue because so many things in the world need semiconductor chips. And to me, I think that we will continue to see chip shortages for the years to come, and that will definitely benefit companies like AMD. Another one of the reasons for the pullback could be the potential Xilinx acquisition. Honestly, I don't think this is really the reason why AMD is down 8% in a week, but it's good to go over this to understand AMD's macro picture. I won't go into the technical details of this here, but it looks like Xilinx will be very beneficial to Lisa Su's business plan to continue to outpace Intel, which we will talk about later. But the reason why the Xilinx deal may be weighing on the stock is because AMD is buying Xilinx in an all-stock deal. What that means is that because AMD is purchasing with all this stock, investors may be wary of dilutive concerns or that AMD is overpaying for Xilinx. But again, to me, not really why AMD should be selling off this week. There could be worries that this deal won't go through with the regulators, but if it actually goes through, then this would be a pretty good deal for AMD. Again, if it goes through. The uncertainty may be weighing on the stock. The next thing I want to talk about is if we look at the first article in Google here, we can see that there could potentially be some fear that Intel could eat AMD's lunch in the future. This is one of the main points that I want to make in the video, is that at least for the next few years, Intel is likely not an existential threat to AMD's business plan, and this is important to understand because Intel is really one of AMD's major competitors. In order to understand what's going on with AMD, you really have to understand what's going on with Intel. We can see here that Intel is set to release a 7nm chip in 2023, but AMD already has a 7nm chip. This is extremely good for Lisa Su and AMD because this affirms that Intel is years behind AMD. And if you know anything about the chip space, you know that being behind by a couple of years is like being behind light years because this field innovates and grows incredibly fast. However, Gelsinger is an engineer, so he could make the right moves to push Intel ahead faster than expected. Also, a few years ago, AMD was actually behind Intel, but they were able to surpass them within the last couple of years. So it's not unthinkable Intel could surpass AMD, but that takes time and you could probably see it coming. So with all that said, I think if you are an investor in AMD, then you should be pretty comfortable, and I do not think that investors really need to worry that much about Intel, but it should definitely be paid attention to. So with all that said, honestly, I think AMD is just selling off because the chip sector is a cyclical sector, and maybe some worries on capital gains taxes as well. So after talking about the macro picture with AMD, let's head on over to the earnings report now to see how AMD is doing as a business. So here we are in AMD's earnings report, and we can see that in the revenues line, which is this line on the earnings report, we can see that year over year with this, the first quarter of 2021, we can see that we are up very nicely, up 93% year over year. However, if we look at the quarter over quarter view, we see that we're only up about 6%. So here it depends on how you want to look at the numbers. You could say that it's just all right growth if you look at the quarter over quarter numbers, or you could say that it is fantastic growth if you look at the year over year numbers. And as always, that's a decision that you have to make on your own. But again, to me, it's not just the revenues that are important to me. What I really like to see is the maintaining or improving of profit margins here, which is shown in this line on the earnings report. And if we look here at the year over year, we are seeing that we are able to maintain our profit margins in AMD. When we're nearly doubling our production year over year, any inefficiencies in the process will compound and decrease our profit margins. However, because we're seeing flat to slightly improving profit margins year over year and quarter over quarter, what that's telling me is that AMD is operating extremely impressively, and that is extremely impressive. However, if we look down here at the net income, which is this line on the earnings report, we can see that year over year, we are up 243%, which is fantastic. However, if we look at the quarter over quarter view, we see that we are down about 70%. So because of this, this kind of prompts some questions. So in order to investigate those questions, we need to go down into the more detailed view of the earnings report, which I pulled up in this tab here. And we can see this discrepancy in the net income is mostly due to a tax thing. We can see that last year we were able to get actually a tax benefit of over $1 billion, which helped improve our numbers for last quarter. However, we did not get the same tax benefit this quarter. So because last quarter's numbers were kind of inflated with the benefit of this tax benefit here, that kind of explains why we didn't see good quarter over quarter growth on the net income. So because it's just a tax thing, that's not really something I consider when investing in a company. So again, even with that, we are growing net income very impressively year over year, with this being the most recent quarter. Again, exactly what I like to see in the fundamentals of the companies that I look to invest in. So with all that said, now let's head on over to the trading charts to see if there's a level or two to buy AMD if we want to buy AMD. So here we are in AMD's trading charts, and we can see that ever since August here, we've been really waving out in this pretty large range between the $75 a share support level here to this $90 to $100 level resistance here. So if we zoom in on today, we can see that we've really broken this pretty well-defined downtrend here and started waving out ever since March. And we've been waving out in a pretty tight range between the $75 support level to this $85 level resistance here, even though we broke through a couple times like we did here and like we did down here. Because of that, I think this level right now, around the $75 to $77 level, would be a good place to start stepping into a position or starting to add shares, because we are at the bottom of this range here. As always, I wouldn't unload all of the money that I had bookmarked for AMD at this level, because if we do break the $75 level, then it is a long way back down to the $57 level where we broke out of. But to me, that is unlikely. Because of that, like I said right now, around the $75 level could be a good spot to consider, as it has been strong support for the past few months now. Looking at the MACD here, if we zoom back in, we can see that our blue line here, which is the measure of short-term momentum, is underneath our long-term momentum line, which is this orange line up here. What that's telling us is that the short-term momentum is weaker than our long-term momentum, which means that we could still see some downside risk in the name. The RSI chart here, or the relative strength index, is not really telling me anything useful at the moment. Basically, we're just waving out calmly, neither in the oversold territory, which is below this 20 line here, nor in the overbought territory, which is above 70. So that was my review on AMD stock. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. If you have any questions or if you got any mistakes, also drop me a comment down below. If you liked the video, please like the video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.